Welcome to our deep dive into the world of Sigmund Freud. So, you want to get a handle on his ideas, right?
Right.
And we've got a whole stack of sources to help us do just that.
Yeah.
I mean, Freud, he's considered the father of psychoanalysis.
He is.
And his work, I mean, it's had this massive impact,
It really has.
not just on psychology,
Right.
but on like art and literature
Yeah.
and even, how we see ourselves today.
Absolutely.
He could be a little intimidating at first, though,
Yeah.
with all that talk about, hidden desires
Yeah.
and the unconscious mind.
Right.
But we're going to unpack it all
We are.
in a way that's fascinating and easy to understand.
In a way that's fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So,
It's amazing how Freud's theories, they were developed over a century ago, but they're still so relevant today.
Mm-hmm.
A great place to start, I think, is with his idea of the unconscious mind.
Okay.
So he proposed this radical concept.
That there's this whole hidden part of our minds
Okay, man.
we're not even aware of.
Whoa.
Yeah.
It's like that iceberg analogy, right?
It is, exactly.
What we see above the water is just the tip.
Right.
It's our conscious awareness.
Yeah.
But like below the surface,
Mhm.
there's this enormous hidden mass.
There is.
That's the unconscious, right?
Yes.
It's such a powerful visual.
It is a really powerful image.
Yeah.
And Freud argued that, this hidden part, it's not just empty space, right?
Well, okay.
It's full of thoughts, feelings, desires,
Okay.
things that we've repressed, things that we've pushed out of our conscious awareness.
So like stuff we don't want to think about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's so fascinating is that even though we're not aware of them,
Mm.
these unconscious elements are still influencing our behaviors and how we experience the world.
Wow.
Yeah. So think about it.
Okay.
Some of your online habits, right?
Yeah.
Like mindlessly scrolling through social media, let's say. Mm-hmm.
What if those are driven by unconscious forces that you haven't even explored yet?
Oh, that's kind of unsettling.
It is a little bit, right?
Yeah. It makes you wonder how much control we really have
Right.
over our actions.
Exactly.
So how do we even begin to understand
Well,
this hidden world within us?
he developed a framework to help us kind of map it out a little bit.
Okay.
He called it the structural model of the psyche.
Okay.
And it consists of 3 parts: the id, the ego, and the superego.
Okay.
So think of it like an internal play, constantly unfolding within us.
So there are different characters at play here.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me more about these characters. You're the id, ego, and superego.
Okay, so imagine the id.
Okay.
It's that impulsive part of you that wants instant gratification.
All right.
It operates on what we call the pleasure principle, right?
Okay.
So it wants what it wants when it wants it.
Gotcha.
It's driven by these primal urges, desires.
So the id is kind of like that voice.
Says, go ahead, eat the whole cake.
Yes.
Stay up all night and binge watch that show.
Yeah.
Doesn't care about consequences.
Oh, no consequences.
Just want to have fun.
Exactly.
All right, so then how do we rein that in?
Well, thankfully, we've got the superego,
All right.
which is there to kind of counterbalance the id's impulses.
Okay.
So the superego, think of that as your internalized moral compass.
Okay.
It's representing all those rules and values and ideals
Okay.
that we've absorbed from society, from our upbringing.
So it's like the voice of our parents.
It can be, yeah.
Or society, like you said.
Exactly, all those rules.
Okay.
So it's striving for perfection,
Mm-hmm.
and it's always pushing us to be our best self.
Okay. So the superego is the one that says, you'll regret eating all that cake.
Exactly.
And you have an early meeting tomorrow, so go to bed.
Yes, exactly. Go to bed.
It's the responsible one.
It is.
It's the one that keeps us in check.
It does, yep.
Okay, so we got the id, we got the superego.
Yep.
Now, where does the ego fit into all of this?
Okay, so then we have the ego, right?
Okay.
And the ego is the mediator between these two often conflicting forces.
So it's stuck in the middle.
It is, yeah, kind of like a referee
Got it.
trying
Right.
to manage these two.
Okay.
So the ego operates on what we call the reality principle,
Okay.
and it tries to find practical ways
Okay.
to satisfy the id's desires,
Right.
while also considering the superego's moral guidelines
Mhm.
and the constraints of the real world.
Okay, that sounds like a tough job.
It's a tough job.
So in that cake scenario,
Yeah.
right, the ego might be the one that says, okay, how about a small slice tonight?
Yeah, a compromise.
And we'll make a healthier breakfast choice tomorrow.
Exactly. Find a balance.
Yeah, it's the one trying to find a compromise.
Exactly, it is.
You know, so it's constantly negotiating, trying to keep both the id and the superego happy.
Yes. Keep everyone happy.
Sounds exhausting.
Right. But sometimes there's inner struggle, right? It creates anxiety.
Yeah, of course.
And that's where the defense mechanisms come in.
Defense mechanisms, what are those?
Yeah, so defense mechanisms?
Are those like the ego's secret weapons?
They are, kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
To handle this psychic pressure.
All right, so tell me more about these defense mechanisms.
So they are unconscious strategies
that
the ego uses to protect us from all that anxiety and all those unpleasant emotions. So they basically help us cope with situations that feel like they're too much or that feel threatening.
Like overwhelming.
Overwhelming, yeah.
Okay.
To our sense of self.
Can you give me some examples?
Yeah, sure.
Of these defense mechanisms?
Okay, so think about repression.
Okay.
Repression is when you push those unwanted thoughts and memories and feelings into the unconscious.
Like just try to bury them?
Exactly. Just try to bury them deep down.
Right.
So, for example, let's say you have a big presentation coming up at work, right?
Yeah.
And this triggers like some anxiety from a childhood experience of stage fright, let's say.
Oh, okay.
Repression might kick in and make it really difficult to even access the memory of that childhood event.
So it's like you just block it out.
You kind of block it out, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So instead of dealing with that old anxiety head on, repression just helps us bury it.
Exactly, bury it.
And avoid those uncomfortable feelings.
Avoid it, yeah.
But doesn't that mean we're kind of like sweeping things under the rug?
Yeah, you could say that.
Like it doesn't really go away, does it?
No, it doesn't really go away.
Okay.
And while repression might offer some temporary relief, those unresolved issues can still influence us in subtle ways.
All right, that makes sense. So what are some other defense mechanisms?
Okay. Another really common one is projection.
Projection, okay.
So that's when we attribute our own unacceptable thoughts or feelings to someone else.
Right.
Like, for example, have you ever been, like, really annoyed by someone who's constantly interrupting others?
Oh, yeah.
And you think to yourself, ugh, they're so rude.
Yes.
And inconsiderate.
I hate that.
But what if deep down you harbor a little bit of that tendency yourself and you're just projecting it outward?
Oh, that's a good example.
Yeah.
It makes you realize that sometimes our judgments of others might actually reflect something we're struggling with internally.
Exactly. So projection is a way of, distancing ourselves from our own flaws.
Right, by seeing them in other people.
Exactly.
Okay, so we got repression, we got projection.
Yeah.
What else do we have in our arsenal?
Well, there's sublimation.
Okay.
And this one is often seen as a healthier defense mechanism.
Okay, good.
So it involves channeling those potentially destructive urges or impulses
into something more socially acceptable, more productive.
Okay, so instead of lashing out at your boss when you're frustrated, you channel that energy into like a killer workout at the gym.
Exactly. That's it. Or maybe you write, a fiery song instead of yelling at your partner during an argument.
So you're taking something potentially destructive and making it into something productive.
Exactly.
All right. Yeah. Wow, this is so fascinating.
It is, isn't it?
It's like we're all walking around using these psychological tricks all the time without even realizing it.
Right.
Makes you wonder how much of our behavior is driven by these, unconscious forces.
That's one of the core insights of Freud's work.
Really?
Yeah, he argued that we're not always the rational, self-aware beings that we like to think we are.
Our actions and choices, they're often shaped by unconscious drives and motivations.
So understanding these defense mechanisms, it's like peeling back the layers of our own personality.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It helps us see why we do the things we do, even when those actions seem irrational or self-defeating.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why, Freud's work is still so relevant today.
Yeah.
It provides us with a framework for understanding human behavior in this, much deeper way.
More nuanced way.
Yeah, nuanced.
This is all so interesting.
It is, yeah.
But I have to admit, the idea that our personalities are like so heavily shaped by unconscious forces, it can feel a little overwhelming.
It can.
It's like, do we really have any control over who we are and how we act?
That's a great question.
Yeah?
And it leads us to another key aspect of Freud's theory, which is his concept of psychosexual development. So he believed that our early childhood experiences, particularly how we navigate certain developmental stages, play a crucial role in shaping our adult personalities.
Ah, yes. This is where the infamous Oedipus complex comes in.
Oh, right. Exactly. That's it.
I'm ready to dive into this.
Okay, let's do it.
But maybe we should save that for part 2.
Okay, yeah, good idea.
Of our deep dive.
Yeah.
Into the world of Freud.
The world of Freud. Lots to uncover.
Okay, so let's pick up where we left off.
Okay.
You mentioned Freud's concept of psychosexual development.
Yes.
And that it can have like a big impact on our adult personalities.
It can.
I know the Oedipus complex is a big part of this theory.
It is.
Probably the most,
I talked about,
yeah.
For sure.
But fill me in on what this is all about.
Right. The Oedipus complex, it's often the most memorable element, I think, of Freud's psychosexual stages, but it's really just one part of this larger framework, right? We're understanding how our childhood experiences shape us.
Gotcha.
So Freud, he proposed 5 stages: oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital.
Okay.
And each stage presents unique challenges and opportunities for growth.
5 stages, okay, each with its own significance.
Right.
So what's happening in each stage?
Okay, so
how do they, influence us later on?
Yeah, so let's start with the first stage, the oral stage.
Okay.
Which roughly spans from birth to about 18 months.
Okay.
During this phase, infants experience the world primarily through their mouths.
Okay.
So sucking, biting, tasting. These actions bring pleasure and a sense of security.
Like it's how they explore, right?
Exactly.
Babies put everything in their mouths.
Everything goes in the mouth.
That's how they're figuring out the world.
Yeah, exactly. They're making sense of the world.
So how does the oral stage connect to our adult personalities?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Could unresolved issues from this stage really impact us later on?
Freud believed so, yes.
Okay.
So he suggested that fixations can arise if a person's needs aren't met during a particular stage.
So for the oral stage,
yeah, for example,
what could that look like?
Someone who experienced, let's say, excessive gratification or frustration during the oral stage, right?
Yeah.
They might develop certain personality traits later on.
Okay, like what?
Maybe they're overly dependent on others, or maybe they have an oral fixation, like smoking or nail biting.
So our early experiences really can leave a lasting imprint.
They can, yeah.
Even if we don't consciously remember them.
Even if we don't remember them, yeah.
What happens after the oral stage?
So around 18 months to 3 years, we enter the anal stage.
The anal stage, okay.
And here the focus shifts to bowel control and toilet training.
It's like the first time kids are experiencing societal expectations.
Exactly.
Right. And the need for self-control.
Exactly, yeah.
Think about all the power struggles that happen during potty training.
Potty training's a big one.
It's a huge developmental milestone.
It is a big one, for sure.
It's so interesting to think about these everyday things,
Yeah.
From a psychological perspective.
Yeah.
Potty training, who knew it could be so psychologically charged?
Psychologically charged.
What does Freud say about
he suggested
how this stage impacts us?
Yeah, he suggested that how we navigate this stage, can actually influence our later attitudes.
Towards what?
Towards things like order and cleanliness. And control.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So, for example, someone who had a really difficult time with toilet training, they might become overly meticulous or rigid later in life.
Okay, that makes sense.
Whereas someone who really rebelled against it might become really messy or disorganized.
So it's all about control in a way.
Yeah, in a way, it is about control.
Pretty amazing how Freud connects these early experiences to specific personality traits.
It is interesting, isn't it?
Okay, what comes after the anal stage?
All right, so between the ages of 3 and 6, we enter the phallic stage.
The phallic stage, okay.
So this is when children become aware of their genitals. And they start to develop a sense of gender identity. And it's during this stage that we see the Oedipus complex emerge.
All right, so walk me through this Oedipus complex.
Okay, so
it's one of those psychological concepts that everyone's heard of, but I'm not sure everyone fully understands.
It's one of those, that kind of gets thrown around.
It does, yeah.
So the classic example is a young boy who develops, unconscious desires for his mother.
Okay.
And starts to see his father as a rival for her affection.
Okay.
So this creates a conflict.
Oh, of course.
Right, because the boy fears his father's disapproval.
Right, yeah.
And punishment, right. But eventually the boy resolves this conflict.
Okay.
By identifying with his father.
Oh.
And by adopting his values and his behaviors.
So it's not so much a literal desire?
No,
not for mother, but more about navigating these, complex emotions and figuring out their place within the family.
Exactly, structure, yeah.
Yeah, it's about understanding those power dynamics.
Yeah.
Identifying with those role models.
Right.
And developing that sense of self.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah.
And is there something similar for young girls?
So Freud also proposed a parallel complex for girls.
Okay.
It was called the Electra complex.
Okay.
But that's been subject to more debate and reinterpretation over the years.
Okay. Yeah, I can see how some of these concepts might be controversial.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little outdated, maybe.
Yeah.
Especially with how family dynamics have changed.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so 2 more stages to go.
Okay.
What happens after this kind of intense phallic stage?
Right, so from about age 6 to puberty, we enter the latency stage.
Latency, okay.
Yeah, and during this phase, sexual urges are kind of dormant. They are.
Yeah, relatively dormant.
Yeah.
As children focus on developing social skills, pursuing their interests, forming friendships, it's a time for exploring the world outside the family.
So it's like a little bit of a breather before...
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
A little consolidation before adolescence hits.
Time to build a sense of self.
Yeah.
Before all the hormonal changes and the relationship stuff of puberty.
Exactly, all the complexities.
Yeah, okay. So then finally, we reach the genital stage.
Yes, which begins at puberty and continues throughout adulthood.
Okay.
And here, sexual urges reemerge.
Okay.
But this time they're directed towards more mature, intimate relationships.
So this stage sounds like it's less about specific conflicts.
Yeah, you could say that.
And more about how we integrate all the lessons from the earlier stages into our adult lives and relationships.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Right.
The genital stage is about finding healthy ways to express our sexuality, form meaningful connections, and create a fulfilling life.
Okay, so we journeyed through all 5 stages of Freud's psychosexual development.
We did it.
It's pretty amazing to think about.
It is.
How our early experiences can shape us in such profound ways.
In such profound ways, yeah.
Even if we're not, consciously aware of those influences.
Even if we're not aware,
That's crazy.
It is, and that's why, exploring the unconscious is so important. It's like, shining a light on those hidden forces that drive our thoughts and feelings and behaviors. It can be a little unsettling.
Oh, yeah.
But it can also be incredibly liberating.
I feel like we've uncovered a lot.
We have.
But I know there's so much more to Freud's work.
Oh, there's so much more.
So what other areas should we explore in our deep dive into his world?
Well, we can't talk about Freud without talking about dreams.
Yes, dreams.
Yeah, he was fascinated with dreams as a way to understand the unconscious mind.
They can be so strange.
They are so strange.
And mysterious.
Yes, they are.
I'm really curious to hear what Freud had to say about them.
So Freud considered dreams to be, like the royal road to the unconscious.
Oh, the royal road.
The royal road.
Okay.
Yeah, so he argued that while we sleep, our defenses are lowered.
Okay.
Right? We're more relaxed.
Yeah.
And so the unconscious can express itself more freely.
So our dreams are like secret messages.
Kind of, yeah.
From our unconscious.
You could think of it that way.
But they're often so bizarre and confusing.
They are.
How do we even begin to understand them?
Right. Well, that's where dream interpretation comes in.
Okay.
So Freud believed that dreams have what he called a manifest content.
Manifest content.
Which is the actual storyline that we remember. And then a latent content.
Okay, a latent content, yeah.
Which is the hidden symbolic meaning behind the dream.
So it's like decoding a secret language.
Exactly. It's like a code that we have to try to crack.
We have to look beyond the surface of the dream to really understand what our unconscious is trying to tell us.
Exactly. You got it.
So, for example, if you have a dream about being chased, the manifest content is just that, right?
Yeah. You're running away from something.
Yeah, you're running away.
Yeah.
But the latent content,
might represent something that you're trying to avoid in your waking life.
Oh, okay.
So maybe like a difficult decision or an unresolved conflict.
So dream interpretation is like detective work.
It is.
You're trying to piece together clues.
Yes, exactly.
Understand the deeper meaning behind these strange nighttime stories.
It is. It is.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I can see how dream analysis could be a helpful tool
in
therapy, right?
Like a way to uncover those hidden anxieties.
It can.
And desires.
Yeah.
That might be influencing our behavior.
Exactly. It can be an invaluable tool.
Yeah.
For understanding our deepest fears and motivations.
This all makes me think about how Freud's ideas have really permeated our culture.
They have.
Like, we hear these terms, like Oedipus complex or like Freudian slip.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
All the time.
But everywhere.
Yeah, even in everyday conversations.
Yeah, it's true.
So Freud's impact goes.
It does, yeah.
Way beyond the field of psychology.
Way beyond, yeah. It's influenced art and literature and film, even advertising.
Wow.
Yeah, he gave us this whole new language for talking about the human mind and behavior.
It's pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing, isn't it?
To think about how one person's ideas could have such widespread influence.
It is. It speaks to the power of those insights, you know?
Yeah. And even though, some of his specific theories have been challenged or modified over time, his fundamental contributions to our understanding of the unconscious, I mean, those are incredibly influential.
Still, even today.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
We've talked about the unconscious mind, the id, the ego, the superego. We've talked about defense mechanisms.
Yes.
We've talked about psychosexual stages.
Yes.
Dreams, even transference and countertransference.
We've covered a lot.
Is there anything else we should touch on
before
we wrap up our deep dive into Freud?
It's important to acknowledge that despite all the impact and influence of Freud's work, it hasn't been without its critics.
Okay, that makes sense.
Some of his ideas, they've been met with skepticism and debate.
I mean, his theories are pretty radical.
They are.
So I'm sure not everyone embraced them wholeheartedly.
No.
So what are some of the main criticisms
that
have been leveled against Freud's theories?
One of the most common criticisms is that his theories are difficult to test scientifically. Many of his concepts, like the unconscious mind, they're hard to measure or observe directly.
So it's more about interpretation
you can
and subjective experience than like hard data.
Yeah, exactly. And some critics argue that, this lack of empirical support makes psychoanalysis less of a science and more of a philosophical or even a literary approach to understanding the mind.
I can see how that could be a point of contention.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah.
What are some other criticisms of Freud's work? Another criticism is that Freud placed too much emphasis on sexuality as like the driving force behind human behavior.
So some critics argue that his theories are just too focused on early childhood experiences and unconscious sexual desires.
So it's like he might have been a bit too fixated on sex.
You could say that.
And not enough on the bigger picture of human development.
Yeah, that's a simplification.
Yeah.
But it captures the essence of the criticism.
Yeah, okay.
And then there's also the criticism that Freud's theories can be too deterministic.
Too deterministic. Okay, what does that mean?
So it means suggesting that our early experiences kind of lock us in certain personality patterns.
Yeah.
And that there's not much room for free will or personal growth.
Okay, so that's kind of a pessimistic outlook.
It is a bit pessimistic, yeah.
Yeah, it does seem a bit pessimistic to think that we're all just playing out the scripts written in our childhoods.
Exactly.
And these are just some of the main criticisms that have been
raised against
Freud's work.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So it's important to acknowledge these critiques.
It is.
When considering his theories.
It's all part of the picture.
Yeah.
Right?
It's clear that Freud was like a brilliant and influential thinker.
Oh, for sure.
But like any pioneer in his field, his ideas have been subject to scrutiny and debate.
Yeah. Which is a good thing.
Right. And that's a good thing.
It is.
Because it shows that psychology is this like dynamic and evolving field.
Yes.
Right. Constantly questioning and refining our understanding of the human mind.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we're still discussing Freud's work.
Over a century later,
that's wild.
I know it is.
Is a testament to his lasting impact.
Yeah, it really is.
And whether we agree with all of his theories or not, there's no denying that he gave us a whole new way of thinking about ourselves and the hidden forces that shape our thoughts and feelings and behaviors.
Absolutely.
So this deep dive into the world of Freud has been incredibly insightful.
Good. I'm glad.
Even thought-provoking at times.
Yeah, it's designed to be.
I feel like I have like a much deeper understanding of his key ideas and their impact on psychology and culture.
And it's not over yet.
Right.
We have one more part to go.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
So before we completely wrap up this episode, I'm curious to hear your take on this.
Okay.
If Freud were alive today, what do you think he would make of our modern world?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question.
I mean, we live in a time of social media.
Yeah.
The internet, this constant barrage of information.
Right. It's a very different world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would his theories apply to these modern challenges?
I think he'd be both intrigued and maybe a little disturbed.
Oh, okay.
By our hyper-connected world, you know?
It's like the digital age has given us a whole new set of ways to express those unconscious desires and fears.
Right.
What would he say about our obsession with curating the perfect online persona?
I think he might see it as a new form of repression.
Okay.
You know, a way of hiding our true selves behind these carefully constructed facades. Mm-hmm. You know, the pressure to present a flawless image online could be seen as a defense mechanism against the anxieties of modern life.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what about online advertising?
Ooh, interesting.
Especially those targeted ads that seem to know our desires before we even do.
He might see that as a clever manipulation of the id, you know? Those ads that appeal to instant gratification, you know, like buy now, pay later.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're tapping directly into the id's desire.
Yeah.
For immediate pleasure.
Without thinking about
Right, without regard for the
consequences. Yeah. It really makes you think about how much of our online behavior is driven by those unconscious forces that we don't even realize are at play.
It makes you question a lot of things, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
And then there's that constant flow of information.
Yeah, the constant
and simulation that we're exposed to online.
Right, yeah.
What would Freud think about that?
I think he might see it as overwhelming to the ego, you know, making it even harder to manage those internal conflicts between the id and the superego.
So in a way, the digital age might be
in a way,
like amplifying those unconscious dynamics
exactly
that Freud was so interested in.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Wow.
And it speaks to, you know, the enduring relevance of his work.
Yeah. Even though he lived in a very different time.
I know.
You know, his insights into the human mind, they still resonate.
Yeah.
And they offer really valuable ways of understanding ourselves and the world around us, you know, especially in this rapidly changing digital landscape.
All right, well said. I think we need to take a break and we'll pick back up with part 3.
Sounds good.
So, you know, as we've been discussing Freud's theories, I've been thinking about how they might apply to, you know, things we see in everyday life.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how these concepts actually play out in the real world, isn't it?
Like, for example, we talked about defense mechanisms earlier.
Right.
Do you think we can actually, like, spot these in action?
Oh, absolutely.
You know, like when we're interacting with our friends or family.
Yeah.
Or even just like scrolling through social media.
Yeah, we see defense mechanisms all the time.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Both in ourselves and in others.
So, like, give me an example.
Okay, think about, you know, that friend who's always posting about their, you know, amazing achievements online.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe exaggerating a bit, you know, to make themselves look good.
Yeah.
Could that be a form of reaction formation?
Reaction formation. Remind me what that is again?
Yeah, so reaction formation is when you're kind of overcompensating for underlying insecurities, right? By projecting this overly positive image.
So it's like they're trying to convince themselves, everyone else, that they're super confident.
Yes.
And successful.
And successful, exactly.
What about that coworker who always blames others for their mistakes.
Yeah, that could be projection at work, right?
Okay.
Instead of taking responsibility for their own shortcomings, they're attributing those negative qualities to someone else.
Right.
It's a way of protecting their own ego from the discomfort of, admitting fault.
Oh, that's so interesting. It's funny how once you start recognizing these defense mechanisms, you see them everywhere.
Oh, I know. It's true.
It's like a whole new way of understanding, like, why people act the way they do.
It is. It's like you have this decoder ring for human behavior.
And it can even help us be more compassionate, right?
Exactly.
Because instead of, like, judging someone for their defensiveness, we can try to understand what might be driving it, on an unconscious level.
Exactly.
So it's about recognizing that, we all have these unconscious patterns and defenses that we're working through.
We all do.
So we've talked about, like, the criticisms of Freud's theories, and we've also explored, how his ideas can be seen in everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, like, after all of this, what do you think is Freud's most lasting legacy? What's the one big takeaway from all of this that's really stood the test of time?
That's a great question. For me, I think Freud's most enduring contribution is the idea that there's this whole hidden world beneath the surface, beneath the surface of our conscious awareness.
Yeah.
A world of, unconscious drives and desires and motivations that really shape our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
So it's the recognition that, like, we're not always in control of our own minds, right?
It is.
That there are forces at play within us that we might not even be aware of. I mean, that's a humbling thought.
It is.
It challenges that traditional view of, human beings as perfectly rational actors.
Right.
Who make conscious choices.
Yeah.
Based on logic and reason alone.
Right. That we're all, perfectly in control. Always.
Yeah.
Freud really showed us that we're much more complex and mysterious than that.
And that complexity is, both fascinating and a little unsettling.
It is. It is.
It's like we're constantly grappling with these unseen forces that are, like, influencing our every thought and action.
It is.
But it's also incredibly liberating. Right.
It is.
Because by understanding these unconscious influences, we can start to, like, unravel the mysteries of our own minds and make more informed choices about how we live our lives.
Yes. And make those conscious choices to change those patterns.
So it's not like we're just, puppets of our past experiences.
No, we're not.
We have the capacity to change, right?
We do.
So it's like Freud gave us a map.
A map, to
navigate this uncharted territory of our own inner worlds.
That's a great way to put it,
And even though that map might not be perfect, it's still an invaluable tool for self-discovery.
It is.
And it allows us to explore those hidden parts of ourselves with more curiosity and compassion.
Exactly.
And that journey of self-discovery, like, it's ongoing.
It is always more to learn.
Yeah.
Always more to uncover.
Right. Always more to understand.
Yeah.
About ourselves and the intricate workings of the human mind.
That's what makes it so exciting.
I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of Sigmund Freud.
We did it.
It's been an incredible journey full of, like, insights and thought-provoking discussions.
It has been a journey.
And it's amazing to think that even though, Freud's theories are over a century old,
I know,
they still offer us valuable ways to understand ourselves, our relationships.
They do.
And even our, like, modern, digitally driven world.
They really do.
It's a testament to the power of his ideas, really.
It is.
And I hope this deep dive has encouraged you to continue exploring the world of psychology.
Me too.
So to all of our listeners out there, keep diving deep, keep asking those questions, and keep exploring the endless mysteries of the human mind.
Absolutely,
Thanks for joining us.